At Story 512, we love stories and we love Austin. So our goal is to help you connect your story to a bigger story, whatever bigger may be for you. To inspire that in you, we're simply going to be interviewing people from all around Austin to determine what it is that inspires them. And what could be more Austin than a former Longhorn football player who dressed for both the national championship games of Vince Young and Colt McCoy? And what happens when you reach the pinnacle in something like football? Is there anything bigger than football in Texas? Today we're going to sit down with Adam Ulatoski to discover not just what drove him to success in his craft, but also what inspires him in life after football. Adam, thank you for being here for our first ever Story 512 episode, which is pretty exciting for us.
Yep.
I think we're the last thing standing in between you and your kind of adult version of a Christmas break.
Yep.
So
a few days.
Got off work, came here. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
But mainly the big kind of hope or dream behind these stories and people we're just going to be having conversations with is we're really trying to find stories that inspire and that we can relate with and connect with in a way that helps us to connect our story to a bigger story. Well, what are the things in life that we're living for bigger than us? And at least in Texas, there's a little bigger than football. And so I wanna start there a little bit, when football came into your life and why Texas and all that kind of stuff, but also hit a little bit on life beyond football too, and our time, just kind of see where it goes from there.
Sure.
But for people that don't know you, hearing your name for the first time, where are you from originally? Where did football kind of enter the picture for you growing up?
Yeah. So I was born in Naperville, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And my family was up from there. And then we moved down to Southlake when I was in first grade. So most of my childhood and most of anything that I remember from that childhood was from living in Southlake. And for people who don't know, Southlake is a very well-known high school football program. And I had no history with football. Nobody in my family played it before. It was just a big deal there.
Yeah.
And so in 7th grade, I did what majority of boys did in 7th grade, and I played football. And just to put it in context, we had 4 7th grade teams, 4 8th grade teams, 2 freshman teams, 2 JV teams, and a varsity team.
Wow. Yeah.
And at that point, in 7th grade, we were a 3A school, I think, maybe 4A. Maybe we just went to 4A.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But we had that many people, and so it was just what you did. And so I started playing football there, and I'm bigger than most people.
Were you always big?
I was always big.
Middle school too?
I was always tall.
Okay.
I wasn't always big.
Okay.
But even when in elementary school, I was the tallest kid.
Yeah. Did you ever play anything besides O-line in middle school or anything like that, or did you start right off the bat?
So, growing up, I played basically everything but football. I played
Okay.
hockey, I played soccer, I played basketball, I played baseball. I didn't play football until 7th grade.
Okay.
And in 7th grade, you played both ways. Everybody played both ways. So I was a defensive tackle and an offensive tackle, but I really only played offense.
Okay.
And I think 8th grade was the same way. And then from freshman year on, all I ever did was play offensive tackle.
Okay.
So.
Were you always competitive, or did you stand in there because you were big, or what was that like?
Competitive how? Good competitive or competitive
Are you
as I wanted
sports,
to win?
I want to win, I want to crush you, or you're like, hey, coaches keep grabbing me because I'm huge and
Yeah. Well, I started as a 7th grader and 8th grader. I didn't start as a freshman, actually. But I did. I'm competitive in pretty much everything we do, and
Yeah.
probably more competitive than I'm willing to admit. If you ask my wife or friends, they would probably say I'm pretty competitive, more so than I would.
Yeah. When did you start to realize like you might be pretty good at this?
So, all right, well, going into my sophomore year, I actually was going to quit football.
Okay.
It just wasn't a huge passion of mine. But I ended up sticking it out. I went and met with the high school coach, and he encouraged me to keep playing, and so I kept playing. And
who was also a Texas
so Coach
right?
Dodge, he actually just retired, winning the state championship. He's a legend.
At Westlake, right?
Yeah, so he won, I think he won 4 or 5 in Southlake, and then I don't know how many he won at Westlake, but he just retired. So, he's a legend of high school football.
Yeah.
So I played under him. And when I was in my junior year, most people kept on telling me, you can go play football wherever you want in college. And I just kind of thought they were blowing smoke. And then after I guess it was spring semester of my junior year, I got called out of my class to go to the office, and I was walking up to the office, and I was trying to think of what I did wrong. And it's like, I don't know, I don't think I did anything wrong, but so I went there, and they said, you need to go to see Coach Dodge in his office. And so I walked all the way down there, which is you actually have to go outside across the parking lot into the field house. And so this whole time I was just like, crap, what did I do? What did I do? And then I finally get in there, and Coach Dodge says, you have a phone call. And so I pick up, and he says, this is Nick Saban from LSU. I want to offer you a scholarship to come play for the Tigers.
No big deal.
And I'm sure I just sounded ridiculous because I had no idea what was coming. I never thought I was going to go play in college. That was never my goal.
Is this like the first coach that you're...
That was my first offer, first coach. I'd gotten letters and stuff in the mail, but and so I don't even really remember what I said. But he was like, so you excited? And I was like, I don't know. I had no idea. But after that, I realized, maybe I can.
I need to think about this a little bit.
Maybe I can actually go play football in college. I guess that was kind of the first time that I thought
that's wild.
I really could play in college.
So who all did you have interest from, or who was on your radar?
Well, growing up, I was a big Duke fan.
Yeah.
Not football, just the school and basketball. And whenever I was in high school, that was kind of the type of school I was thinking about. And once we started kind of folding football in there, academics were still a big focus of mine. So I was going to go to school for college and football, but I wasn't going to go just for football.
Right.
When I started getting interest, I had some interest from like Michigan and Notre Dame that I considered. I had interest from A&M and then Texas. So ultimately, at that point in time, when you get offered by Texas, back then you went to Texas, so it was great. It fit everything. I got to stay close to home. Parents could come see me play. Great academics, great football. So it just, it all fit for me.
Yeah. So then the timing was, you said you were was it a gray shirt for?
So yeah.
What's the right terminology for that?
So yeah, coming out of high school, and actually for majority of my senior year, I had 3 herniated discs in my back.
Okay.
But I didn't actually know I had 3 herniated discs in my back because I thought I had something wrong with my hamstring because I didn't know anything different. And, I kept on getting sharp pains down the back of my legs, and I thought I pulled my hamstring or something. So I was going to come and work out at UT the summer before what would have been my freshman year, and you have to go through a physical to be able to do that. And they asked, is there anything wrong? And I was like, I think I have something wrong with my hamstrings. And they like describe it, and I explained it, and they said, you need to go get an MRI on your back. And I said, why do I need an MRI on my back? It's my hamstring. And, find out it's all sciatica, and I had the 3 herniated discs in there. And so went to an orthopedic surgeon, and the first one I went to basically said, you need to have surgery and you'll never play football again.
Wow.
And so
like that clear, he's like, you're done.
That was what he said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I went to another one who had more experience with sports and with professional athletes. And he said, if you were older, if you weren't an athlete, then I would probably recommend you get surgery. But, I think you can get by with doing physical therapy and working through it. And he's like, but if you do have surgery, you will never play again. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
So I ended up.
Did that scare you at that point? Like, how much of this is like, football's my future, my identity, or you're like, okay, fine then? I mean, what?
I was young and stupid, and I probably didn't think much of it, honestly. It was just, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah.
And so I did what's called a gray shirt because of that, because I wouldn't have been able to practice. I wouldn't have been able to do anything really with the team other than rehab. I gray shirted, which basically means you don't start as a full-time student, and so your clock for NCAA eligibility doesn't start. So I went to community college and took a couple classes, and I did rehab for 6 months while the Longhorns, this was 2004, ended up going to the Rose Bowl for Michigan.
Right.
And interesting side note, there was 1 year that if you came in early or you came in late like I did, you could go to the bowl game with them. They only had it for that 1 year.
Yeah.
And so I actually got to go to the Rose Bowl there. Then the next year was 2005 Rose Bowl National Championship game. Then it was, in 2008 we went to the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State, and then 2009 went to the National Championship again with Alabama. So I actually got to go to 4 BCS games.
That's ridiculous.
But really, the first one was just technicality.
I'm counting it. That's awesome.
So I ended up starting school in the fall of 2005. The spring of 2005.
Okay. And when did you actually start getting playing time? What was your first time out on the field?
Yeah, so my redshirt year, for a lot of the games they had me travel because we had a couple injuries on the offensive line, and so if somebody else were to go down, they were going to have me come in and burn my red shirt. So through that year, I traveled with the team for most of the games, but never ended up playing. So then I had that red shirt year. And then my red shirt freshman year, against OU, our right guard tore his ACL. And so it was at the beginning, I think it was first quarter, maybe beginning of second quarter. And so they ended up moving the right tackle, who was an All-American, Justin Blaylock, to right guard, and they had me playing at right tackle. And since then I started the rest of that year and then going forward.
Wow, no pressure. Red River rivalry, that atmosphere, game number 1.
Yeah, it was not my best game, but we won, so it's all right. Wow. And then the next game, actually, so my first game going in as a starter was against Nebraska when they had Adam Carricker and Jay Moore, and Adam Carricker ended up being a first-round draft pick, and Jay Moore was a third-round draft pick.
Yeah.
So that was my first real start, was against those guys.
Yeah. Who are some of the best guys you ever played against?
Man, I played against a lot of good guys. The one that people probably know most right now is Von Miller, because he's still killing it in the NFL. But win against, I don't know, Gerald McCoy. Honestly, the best player I ever played against was on my own team. It was Brian Arakpo.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
He was good.
Yeah, that's great. Did you play Ndamukong Suh as well?
I went against him for 3 snaps.
3 snaps,
Yeah,
okay.
so not really.
Okay.
He was more 3 technique or 1 technique. So, nose guard or defensive tackle. So
right.
I didn't really go against him very much, but our team played him. So.
Right. So then you're starting for the rest of your career after that. You're in the national championship game with Colt against Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And just to go on record, if he doesn't get injured, do we win that game?
Of course.
It's obvious.
Yes, it's obvious.
Okay, I just want to hear from an actual football player who knows his stuff.
Yes,
Man, do you remember that moment? Because if you go YouTube that, your jersey is like the next clearest. Granted, you had your block because I've watched it, but.
Now the option look, and Colt McCoy bangs into an offensive lineman who was being pushed back by Dederick. Brandon Dederick was in there, and so too was Darius, number 57. Darius, big-time defensive player for the Tide. There he is.
Yeah, big hit, Marcel Darius in this football game.
That moment that anything serious had just happened, did you?
No. Whenever I was playing football, all the stuff that goes on is really all for the fans.
Yeah.
All you think about is what is the next play, and then is what's my assignment out that play, what is the defense doing, how do I take this step. It's just that, you don't get too caught up in all the other stuff because there's too much stuff you have to figure out and do. It's just next play at a time, or one play at a time, next play.
Yeah. I'm curious, whether you pick a national championship game or just any game here in DKR, 100,000 people, screaming for your team. Like, what is that moment like? Because I think one of the things I'm curious about is certainly in the state we live in, but so many people grow up, and it doesn't have to be sports, but for a lot of us it is, imagining that level of success, like imagining that level of recognition, imagining playing in those kinds of games. Right, and then very few people have actually lived it and walked it and made it to that level. If you were to describe man, this is what it's like to be in a national championship game, to be at the pinnacle for a lot of people, how would you articulate that?
It's hard to articulate. I think a lot of people see the success and they see the interviews and all the kind of glory that goes to it. What a lot of people don't see is everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's fighting through injuries, whether it's all the time that you spend and you miss out on what a normal college experience is, because you don't have that. You don't see all the work that's put in. I think everybody knows about that, but I think it's more the other stuff. You don't have the college experience like everybody else. You're exhausted all the time. When I was trying to read, it would be hard for me to stay awake more than 30 minutes before I just fall asleep. The best part about it all is frankly the relationships that you build, because whenever you're going through all that stuff together, that's kind of what can really bring a team together, what can really bring people together. Is persevering through a lot of that stuff, and so I think that was kind of the best part about it. All the success and all the recognition and all that stuff. It's one of those things that it's never going to be enough. It's always more. It'll satisfy you for a day, and then it's okay. Now what? Because there's always next year, there's always next game, there's always a next play. It's just, you're never going to fill a need by doing that. And that's not to say that ambition or anything like that is a bad thing. I just think it's, how is it done in a healthy place? Is it done because you love it and you enjoy it and that's what you want to do, and not strictly for that that feeling of success or that feeling of I made it, because you've never made it, and as soon as you do, somebody else has made it better than you. So it's one of those things that it's not as that aspect of it is not what people, I think, really think it is.
feels like one of the hardest things to actually believe if you haven't experienced it. Because, you will hear people say something along those lines that have experienced the top 1% of success. But then it's like, well, I think I still want to try it, though, I think I want to see if it fills it for me, you know? I mean, what do you say to somebody in that kind of, like, place that it is more of that striving, it is trying to fill a hole, it is, identity-based?
I think sometimes it's just people have to experience it to realize that it's not.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the first person to ever say that,
Yeah.
right? But I'll just ask yourself, if you did that, how would your life be different?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't change that much. It'll change in the short run.
Sure.
But a year later, it's like, okay. You'll go and you'll celebrate it, the 10-year anniversary. It's like, okay, that's a nice night, but it's not something to live your life for.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, but it's not something that you're going to rest on for the rest of your life.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an interesting question to ask yourself, to like really try to play that out. Like what am I actually hoping it's gonna feel is actually gonna be different, is actually, and to your point, it's like people maybe get to trust, or they got to go try it and realize the hole is still there. Like, It's like one of the two. Those are your two options.
Yeah.
Man. But then you go and play in the NFL. Technically is, I think, the way you said it.
Technically. I didn't really play. I signed a free agent contract with the Texans. Ended up hurting my knee. Signed some stuff I shouldn't have signed, saying I could play because of fear. And then had a few weeks off, and my agents called me and said the Chargers wanted you to come try out. And I kind of told them I'd been able to step away for a few weeks and realized, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know how long I didn't want to do it. It wasn't just then, but I think I finally just realized it. Like, this is too much. This is too hard on my body. This has never been what I dreamt of growing up. It's just been the next thing I did. And so I told my agents, I think I'm done. And they said, go out to the Chargers. To San Diego. Back then, San Diego. They'll do a physical. Hopefully they fail you.
Yeah.
And if they fail you, then you can go back and basically get compensated like you should have been before. The Chargers said that I passed, but I had to sign all sorts of waivers of pre-existing injuries. And so I basically said, thanks, but no thanks.
Wow.
I took a suitcase out there with an overnight pair of clothes. I knew I wasn't staying there. I knew I was done at that point.
Wow. And is that a scary moment for you? This has been over half your life now. Are you like excited for what's next, or are you like, okay, what is life like after football?
I don't think I thought it through that much. I think it was just I'd gotten to the point where I knew that wasn't it.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't want to do it anymore. I knew my wife, so I got married the summer after my senior year.
Okay.
And so at that point in time, I was married, or I don't remember the time frame, or we either were married or we were like a month from getting married. But she was a teacher, and so she can't just pick up and find a job anywhere else, and so I could drag her around trying to find a job in the NFL that I don't really even want, but I just feel like I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. It probably should have been scarier than it actually was, because I just didn't give it enough thought.
Sure. No, that
I
makes sense.
just knew I was done with that.
Yeah.
I just knew I didn't want that anymore.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So you go from this place of, and it's football all the time, experience a lot of success with it. You're in a national championship, trying to figure out, am I going to play in the NFL? finally decide no. So you should go from kind of this pinnacle, and I know we're fast forwarding and skipping a little bit, but then into your adult life, you go through something totally unexpected that I don't want to rob and tell the story for you, just knowing parts of your story with your dad, right? So I'd be curious next, maybe just to tell people what happened, but then I'm curious how you navigate, this unexpected piece of your story too.
Yeah. So in 2013, my dad was going in to get a stent put in, normal everyday type of procedure. They do, dozens of them a day. A doctor will do a dozen a day. It's just, it's not a big deal. And whenever he was getting the stent put in, his artery split on the operating table. And I was at work, and my mom called me and said, this is what happened. You need to get here as soon as you can. They said it's not good. So I'm driving in from Austin. My brother was out in El Paso, and so he drives in from there. My dad basically fought long enough for all of us to be there together, and then he passed away from, on the operating table there. So yeah, it was certainly unexpected.
Yeah.
Just one of those freak deals that.
Yeah. Well, one, I'm sorry. I mean, I know it's not the first time we've talked about it, but it's one of those things in life you don't plan, you don't picture. It's not how you see future, and with his grandkids and all of those kinds of moments. I am curious. I just think in our culture, I think specifically even with men, there is this. We go through the unexpected of life, the lowest valleys of life, loss like that, and there's this spoken or unspoken pressure on us a lot to just, kind of tough it out, to kind of just, I got to be strong for my family, I got to be strong for others, what was dealing with and navigating that loss like for you?
Yeah, a lot of it is a blur.
Yeah.
Honestly. I'm not the greatest of communicating my feelings with other people.
There's a big club of that.
Yeah. And so I isolated a lot.
Yeah.
And I think when you go through something that's kind of traumatic like that, unless somebody has gone through something very similar, you're going to always have your guard up. It's always going to be, well, you don't know what it's like, and even, with mine, and I'm not proud to say this, but it was like, my dad was 57 at the time.
Right.
So very young. I was 28 or 27. And so it was like, somebody lost their parent, was like, yeah, well, at least he, made it to whatever, it was one of those things. It's just, you're bitter, and it's, you push people away, and so I don't encourage people to do it that way. That was, could have made things a lot easier, but I think that was how I made it through, I guess. I don't know. I made it harder on myself, probably, more likely.
Yeah, I'm curious, obviously people are going to be all over the map in terms of pain in their past, or if, could be currently navigating loss. Is there anything in hindsight that is most helpful in a circumstance, or perhaps that you wish of, man, I wish I would have done more of this to connect with others? Or what would you say to somebody trying to navigate one of the most difficult or the most difficult pains kind of their life right now?
I am certainly not an expert.
Yeah.
So, I think it is, don't isolate, you're not going to being by yourself is not going to make it any better. And, hopefully you have people around you that are for you and that have your best interests at heart, and they want to help you. And as much as you can, let them, lean on other people.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not an expert. I can't say I was the best at it. So I would try that differently.
Yeah.
If I could.
Yeah.
But.
Well, there's just so many ways to isolate in our culture, and it's so natural to do that, And so I think, you're spot on. It makes so much sense, and I do appreciate you talking about it because, the difficulty in that we all have expressing feelings and doing it with a couple of cameras pointed at you too. I appreciate that. I'm kind of curious, to wrap our conversation. One of the bigger themes that I'm just interested in, what maybe inspires you, or what it is that is kind of bigger than you that you see yourself living for today. Because I think for a time, I don't want to speak for you, but I think for a time you would have said that's football. That's just what's next in front of you and next level, right? And that's 10 years in your past now. And so in that journey since, what are you like, man, what's that North Star today? What's bigger than you, or what drives you today?
Yeah, I would say it wasn't, football was certainly a part of it at the time, but I would say it was more than that, because it was success in everything.
Right.
I had to be the best in everything, whether it was academics or football or whatever I did. It was this image that I was I was trying to live up to. And then once football's done, school's done, all these things where you're literally getting ranked, and you go to a combine and they measure everything and all that.
I saw you run a 40 on YouTube too. You were flying. I was impressed by that.
Relative flying. Relative.
Compared to what I expected it to look like, I was like, man, that looked athletic. It was impressive.
Yeah. What was? So at the time, that was it.
Yeah.
And then all that went away. And I think, a lot of athletes struggle with that. I think a lot of athletes, because, you go from 100 and some thousand people cheering for you and, you getting praise everywhere you go to, you're just a guy, and you don't really know what to do. It took a while, for a time, I think I was still probably struggling with that somewhat when my dad passed away.
Yeah.
And so, that was another thing that hit to my, identity was, now I've lost my father.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it started off as my family. My wife and I have 2 boys, and as we started building that out, after all that was after my father passed away. I think my identity started getting built with that, and then just I was not really a part of church wasn't really a thing at that point in my life, and but we wanted our kids to go to church.
Yeah.
So we started going to church, and I started experiencing it in a completely different way than I remember growing up. And that's not blame on anybody other than myself. I don't, but it was different. And so as I kind of explored that a lot more and did, some real thought and time into that, and ultimately that's where it is now, is my faith in God and being a son of God. And it's something that if you would have asked me while I was playing football, it never would have been that. Because I was so focused on success and that,
Yeah. So I'm hearing, to an extent, being a husband, being a father, and this newer faith element, how does that feel different, or how is that experience different than when success was the main driver for you?
Success, when that is what you're after, there's kind of this level of, paranoia is the right word, or just insecurity, but you're always just like, is it good enough? Is it good enough? And it's never good enough. That's the answer. No, it's never going to be good enough. And even if it is good enough, it's good enough for a short time, and then it's not good enough anymore. And so it's sustaining. It's something that you can rest in and have confidence in and have security in, which is something completely different than chasing after success and recognition and all those things.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's awesome, man. I think we're probably over a 30-minute mark at this point. Who knows? But I really do genuinely just appreciate your time, connecting, getting to hear, more and more of your story. To me, at a minimum, and I think to a lot of people watching, it's very relatable. It's authentic, and there's a lot in there that I think is just going to be really helpful to a lot of people. So I appreciate you. We appreciate you being a part of this. Hope you and the fam have a great Christmas.
We're looking forward to it.
So it's been great. Thanks, man.
Of course.